Okay, it's Saturday, October 1st, 8:05 p.m. I'm just winging it. I'm going to start here. This is Chris Hayes' audience turns on him for telling the truth about Ukraine. At some point in American history, well, let me say what this is about. The Jimmy Dore Show. This guy is an ex-Catholic and he does a comedy show about how stupid Americans are, and to me, it's about how stupid he is. It's all everything's funny. In response to a question posed on Twitter about what regular citizens can do to help prevent nuclear war, MSNBC host Chris Hayes tweeted that a possible starting place would be by ending arms shipment to Ukraine to pressure the Zelensky government to negotiate a peace deal. Yeah, finally, after promoting it all this time, MSNBC has come to their senses that we're on the brink of a nuclear war. But the people they've led all this time, who we'll get to later in this broadcast, are so imbecilic that they think nuclear war with Putin is there's not going to be any consequences because you just punish people by lecturing them and they fold with a bunch of people running around with silly costumes and talking about their genitals and moralizing about who's evil and who isn't. And then the deluge, as Hayes' Twitter following tore into him for promoting appeasement, excusing genocide. What's genocide have to do with anything? And of course, pushing Russian talking points. Russia doesn't have any talking points. You think Russia has the least interest in what all these nincompoops think, including our government nincompoops, who incidentally are blowing up the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines so that the people in Europe aren't going to have any heat this winter or manufacturing. It's destroying the whole economy. And they're looking to blow up the other gas pipelines so that as I keep saying, this is a satanic agenda. It has nothing to do with people. It's people who are being puppets of Satan. Trump is not the puppet of Putin any more than Biden is the puppet of Obama. They're all puppets of Satan. That's my belief, and I'm sticking to it. At some point in America in history, the American TV audience transitioned from preferring that they be lied to and moved to belligerently and angrily demanding they be lied to, along with being extravagantly flattered as all-knowing and godlike by their various, from Russell Brand to Stephen Colbert to Bill Maher to Jimmy Dore to, he's got 185,000 viewers. They've all got their own little following of geniuses. None of them know what's going on. And everybody, look at the big smile on Dore's face. I'm not smiling. And nobody's going to be smiling when the heat goes off. Nobody's going to be smiling when the economy crashes. If Americans thinking it's not going to happen here, look at the tent cities. Look at the homeless encampments being burned down. Look at your neighbors down in Florida. Oh, but it didn't hit my family. It only hit these other families. It has nothing to do with me. And who's going to pay for the rebuilding of Ukraine and the rebuilding of Florida, and the rebuilding of all of the destroyed businesses and smashed buildings and people being shot and stabbed? Who's going to pay for the hospital bills of everyone shooting themselves and all the vaccines and whatnot? Nobody's thinking at all about anything else but their own little private Idahos. I'm going to read something from this man, and that at the beginning, one of the great men of this last century. Leonard Ravenhill. Someone asked me, do you pray for the dead? I said, no, I preach to them. I think every pew in every church is death row. Think about that. They're dead. They sing about God, they talk about God, but they're dead. They have no living relationship with God. In the early church, signs and wonders and miracles followed. They cast out demons, blindness, and paralysis. That's normal Christianity. Today's church wants to be raptured from responsibility. They also want to play act that they're curing people and nobody's being cured. Maybe they should cure themselves to begin with. I'll read from Ravenhill for a few minutes and then I'll go on to other things. No man is greater than his prayer life. This is what's important. The pastor who is not praying is playing. The people who are not praying are straying. The pulpit can be a shop window to display one's talents. The prayer closet allows no showing off. Poverty-stricken as the church is today in many things, she is not most stricken here in the place of prayer. We have more organizers, but few agonizers. Think of Christ in the garden, the agony in the garden, Christ weeping when he sees Jerusalem and what is coming to Jerusalem. Look at what's coming to New York. Look at what's coming to Washington, D.C. Look at what's coming to Los Angeles. Look at what's already visited these cities. Well, we sit in this stupor of pleasure. Many singers, many players and players and payers, but few prayers. Many singers, few clingers. Lots of pastors, few wrestlers. Wrestling with the angel, wrestling with God, wrestling with their demons. Many fears, few tears. Much fashion, little passion. Many interferers, few intercessors. Many writers, but few fighters. Failing here, we fail everywhere. The two prerequisites to successful Christian living are vision and passion, both of which are born and maintained by prayer. The ministry of preaching is open to few. The ministry of prayer, the highest ministry of all human office, is open to all. Spiritual adolescents say, I'll go not tonight, it's only the prayer meeting. It may be that Satan has little cause to fear most preaching, yet past experiences sting him to rally all his infernal army to fight against God's people praying. Modern Christians know little of binding and loosing, though the onus is on us. Whatsoever ye shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Have you done any of this lately? God is not prodigal with his power, but to be much for God, we must be much with God. Prodigal is wastefully extravagant. God is not wastefully extravagant with his power. Satan is. That's who has been showering gifts and power and wealth and talent on his people doing his bidding. The world hits the trail for hell with a speed that makes our fastest plane look like a tortoise. Yet alas, few of us can remember the last time we missed our bed for a night of waiting upon God for a world-shaking revival. Our compassions are not moved. We mistake the scaffolding for the building. Present-day preaching, with its pale interpretation of divine truths, causes us to mistake action for unction. Unction is the anointing with the holy oil. Commotion for creation and rattles for revival. That's the rattlesnakes and the rock and roll Jesus he's referring to. The rock and roll Jesus freaks out in the New age, from the new age to the old age to the grave. Here's some of the devastation. Take a look. The news has passed on from this. Who's going to rebuild this? We're in nuclear war. These fools on Jimmy Dore and the Chris Hayes people, the MSNBC people, the social justice warriors, what are they doing? Are they going to go down and rebuild Florida? Oh no, we're going to have nuclear war with Russia to punish genocide. It's just unbelievable. If Ravenhill could see this, he wouldn't believe it. I can't believe it. Here's more of it. It looks, as the description is, this is yet another video reporting on actual real-world events and circumstances, as opposed to the complete entertainment bubble fantasy world people in the Western entertainment media lie complex prefer to live in. So if you find reality disturbing to you, I suggest you switch over now to Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, or Stephen Colbert, depending on what fantasy world you prefer to inhabit, either liberal or conservative. Not that either of those words have any real meaning today, along with all the other nonsense words like God, Satan, Buddha, art, insurance, real estate. If there's anything no longer real today, it would be real estate. There it is. It's real, all right. If there's anything no longer real today, there's one building standing. That's like after a bomb hits, right? That's what God is doing. I hate to break it to people, that particularly to Christians who think that we're protected because we're in singing and dancing and throwing money at the feet of Creflo dollars, or the Buddha source, loves us all. We're underwater. We're going underwater, right? Does anybody remember what 2008 was when all the mortgages were underwater? That's what's going to happen now. People living in these, what's left here, this is probably some place with, millions of dollars in real estate that's underwater, literally. And when the banking collapse comes, the financial collapse, the real estate collapse, the market collapse, everybody's going to be underwater on their mortgage because their house will be worth half of what it was when they first purchased it. Maybe younger people that don't have any idea what happened in 2008. I read a book, or even watch a movie, watch Margin Call. Here's some song lyrics at the time of this 60s social justice revolution. Phil Ochs is the singer. That's what I'm reminded of. It's a few lines that just pop into my head. So, outside of a small circle of friends, look outside your window. There's a woman being grabbed. They've dragged her to the bushes where now she's being stabbed. Maybe we should call somebody, try to stop the pain. But Monopoly is so much fun. I'd hate to spoil the game, and I know it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. Ochs was a contemporary of Bob Dylan. There's some more houses underwater, some more cars underwater. There's somebody being stabbed. Shocking moment. Schoolboy stabs and slashes woman with a knife in street brawl outside a chicken shop. 15-year-old boy is arrested. Well, he'll be out on the street the next day. That's these kids know that if they're minors, they can do whatever they want. They won't have a criminal record. There he is. It doesn't interest anybody though, so I'll turn this one off. That's Phil Ochs. There's Bob Dylan. They were equal in celebrity in the early, the 65, 66 days before the psychedelic revolution drowned, made Phil Ochs submerged underwater. Ochs was a contemporary of Bob Dylan, and for my money, he was a greater songwriter and musician, as his lyrics actually were saying something that he believed in about our own self-absorbed, pleasure-seeking society. Love Me, I'm a Liberal was written to puncture the hypocritical pretenses of the liberal class, who today have magically transformed themselves into socialist Marxists overnight, burning down cities, destroying statues, and the business community, their own cities, their own tax base. And a wave of evictions is on the surface. And Joe Biden, who was giving everybody free education, has canceled they're back to having to pay their student loans off all of a sudden. Not that anybody has paid any attention to what Joe Biden is saying, because they're still marching along with Joe. They put on pink pussy hats back then, right? To the infantile nature of this is what really astounds me. They're commanded by Katy Perry and Madonna, who promises everyone voting for Hillary Clinton a blowjob. There's ever been a true socialist and liberal warrior for social justice, peace, equality, and the redistribution of wealth to the poor working masses. The names that come immediately to mind are Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. Here's Phil and Bob Dylan writing tunes together there in the East Village, or the Washington Square Park village itself. Here's the demonstrators. What does this even mean? Quit putting your small hands on my body. There's a small mind for you. How in the world okay, put on your pink pussy hats, everybody. Get your signs, make some really interesting puns that don't mean anything. It's kind of like Bob Dylan lyrics. He should have been writing the songs for this. It's just like that. Lets everybody get stoned, lets everybody smoke reefer, lets everybody drop acid with Timothy Leary, and then we've changed the world by going out and having love in the park. Who's going to fight the war? Who's going to build the cities? Who's going to do all this manual labor? Oh, these people? No, the people that don't get paid anything. These people are probably office workers or bureaucrats. They work in an office and process medical forms. Here's another one. What are they fighting for exactly? Well, their right to do whatever the hell they want. He shall overcome and underwhelm. Yeah. Well, who's underwhelming us at the moment? If this isn't underwhelming, I don't know what is. Dissent is paid. What are they dissenting from? What are they dissenting from? Trump isn't even in office at this point. Why don't they wait until he does something before they dissent? They don't follow what he does. It's just the fact that he has a different political belief than they do. But where's this is what the anti-war, it was an anti-war movement. People weren't out in the streets burning their bras so they could go dance at Woodstock. Now that's what they're really mobilized for. I was at the anti-war protest against the Iraq War. There wasn't a fraction of the number of people that came out because they were angry at losing the election. They come out in the streets when there was an Iraq war and people are going to be bombed. They're too busy. None of these people would have shown up or did show up for that. I worked with these liberals. Not a single one went to the anti-war statement against George W. Bush because they were for George W. Bush. I'm the historical conscience of these hypocrites. There they are, Mr. and Mrs. America. That's what America really stands for. This guy has made $100 million for giving speeches to other liberals. I won't even go into this clown. They're Lady Macbeth. It's worse than clowning because these clowns are responsible for killing millions and millions of people. And that includes American citizens. They built the prison industrial complex. They destroyed the financial crisis of '08 came from Bill Clinton deregulating the banks. These are your banksters here. These are your NWO people here. Wake up. Here you go, Anthony. Recognize him? Mr. Wiener, sexting his wieners. Here's Mr. Blowjob. Here's Mr. Fraudulent. Tawana Brawley makes up a story about being raped by white people. This guy, they play racial politics, just like Jussie Smollett makes up a story about being attacked by white Trump racist or white racist. And they get away with it because they have liberal black mayor or liberal black justices. Doesn't matter, just make something up. The fools here on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, will believe it. They see the sun going down, but the eyes in their head see the world spinning round, particularly if you're John Lennon on dope and Freemasonry. That's the point I'm making, is this is the new, these are the rulers. There's the same bosses, just like the old boss. The old blame it on the bossa nova boss. Here she is. There's your goddess. What's the symbolism? What's Freemasonry? What's the ancient religion of Egypt? Here she is as Cleopatra. I'll show you David Bowie, who was a Crowleyite, Thelema, the religion of sexual perversion, the religion of sex magic. What's this in her teeth? That's like chompers in... I can't even go. I can't even believe what we've turned into. And not being able to see it. It was hidden in plain sight. See the Egyptian symbols, the Ankh? Here's one of the Abby Hoffman, one of the revolutionaries from the 60s. He killed himself. Of course, they all end up killing themselves. He's found dead at his mid-50s. He was on the run. They're always organizing to destroy the establishment. Well, they are the establishment of dope smokers. The establishment of life is enjoy yourself at rock concerts and dance naked in the streets, wild in the streets, the Wild Boys. Shoot up the place. I should pull up a picture. There's Jim Morrison in late age. What's the one eye symbol? This is just before he ODs on French heroin, pure French Connection heroin in Paris. This is Pollock as he's burned out. This is after his big show. His wife is traveling around Europe, so he's got, a Jewish replacement for his Jewish wife, comes in to grab onto success. He's the most successful artist. He's done. He can't have sex. He's too burnt out, but she's going to play the sex goddess for him. He drives his car at full speed into a tree, killing a woman in the back seat who's screaming. And the two of these murderers, drunk driving that kills some innocent person, that is Ruth Kligman is her name, that is her friend, is killed because of her ambition. She lives and gets, she's a famous artist in Santa Fe. I don't know what happened to her after that. Probably another drug suicide or drug overdose. And here's Kerouac. That's just before he kills himself by drinking himself to death. His whole insides explode. He leaves behind him wives, and he leaves behind him a daughter that he never recognized because they're too busy on the road. So how does that compare to a man of God like a Leonard Ravenhill as being a significant American figure rather than what was created by all of this? What's created by this? What's created by any of this? But destruction. At the top of the pyramid, I'll try to pull it up. At the top of the Capitol is a statue, Capitol Dome statue. There she is. That's what Katy Perry is symbolizing here. It's Cleopatra, it's Minerva, it's the goddess of war, it's Athena. The song of Katy Perry's song is called Dark Horse, I think. So what she's saying, make your Aphrodite, make me your one and only, but don't make me your enemy, your enemy, your enemy. Well, I'm her enemy. I'm the enemy of Aphrodite. I'm the enemy of this pagan belief system because that's the enemy of God. This is paganism. It's on top of the Capitol building. In 1885, the person in command of the Capitol building dome construction was Jefferson Davis. He would be a Freemason. He would become president of the rebel states just a short decade later. You notice there's this bipolar quality to America? The bundle of rods she's holding, see this? That's the lector, the Roman lector, symbols of authority. The Roman lictors used this. It's the fascia, intertwined snake. And the name fascism that Mussolini used to call his new political movement comes from that word. Where does Mussolini come from? Well, the capital city of Rome, the Vatican. That's the Antichrist city. The statue of the goddess of war appropriately sits atop the Capitol Dome in Washington, D.C. And who are they at war against? They're at war against God. They're at war against the people of God. So you're either on the side of the people of God, you're either on the side of God, or you're on the side of Rome. There's Rome, and Rome is who Paul, the apostle, is writing to his disciples who are underground lest they be thrown to the lions by the Romans. And just as Jesus instructs, and all Christians instruct, is come out of Rome. Turn your back on Rome. Turn your back on all these possessions. Turn your back on all this pleasure dome. The Greek incarnation of Athena. Athena is the goddess of war, and Hillary Clinton is appropriately the current goddess of war of the war party, who naturally in these Orwellian times disguise themselves as the peace party, just like Trump is the peace party. For decades, I've identified Bill and Hillary as Lord and Lady Macbeth. Why Americans can't see that, I imagine, is that they're either entirely unacquainted with Shakespeare, or they exist in this childish Walt Disney fantasy world where no matter how many corpses are left behind after American bombers level foreign cities, and this is starting back in World War II with Dresden being firebombed. Kurt Vonnegut wrote Slaughterhouse-Five about it. He was in Dresden as a soldier when it was firebombed. They just destroyed the entire city. It's a civilian city. It wasn't a military target, but that's how it is when you're a god of war. And the vaporized people, mothers, children, fathers, infants, and infantile and teenage and Now they're in their cosplay uniforms. There's a sense in which human beings have become so traumatized that they escape completely from reality. And you see that most in Japan. I think the trauma of being bombed with nuclear weapons is what put Japan into this infantile, childish state that's sexualized, like sadomasochism and bondage. And look at manga cartoons. What is that all about? Well, it's about war, revenge. We have to stop, we have to stop the madness, at least in each individual person. And what was Harry Truman? That's who dropped the bomb. Harry Truman was a 33-degree Freemason. Europe and Germany in particular are currently realizing that Henry Kissinger's unsurprising statement applies to them as well as everybody else. While it's terrible to be America's enemy, it's even more terrible to be her friend. Given the war goddess on top of the Capitol building and the current crop of Biden's furies, it's safe to say that the proper pronoun should be feminine. What I'm attempting to do here is depersonalize all these personalities to indicate that living human beings are simply manifestations of certain powers of both darkness and light that they hold within themselves, and that very few people understand. Because if they did, they wouldn't be playing around with them so carelessly, and particularly in states of drug-addled delusion, which is necessary for them to do what they're doing. It's like this. Why do these people end up like this? Because the only way they can deny their immorality of their behavior and their actions is to keep high all the time. Ochs was just bombed out completely. So let's get back to a typical story is Phil Ochs. Ochs went insane early on in his career, right after his social protest Marxist phase. Unlike his friend Dylan, he held on to his idealism. See if I can get Phil back up so you can take a look at how he was at the beginning when he was idealistic. On the tour, he was taking Valium for years. And like Morrison and Kerouac, he was an alcoholic, thus combining large amounts of alcohol with the Valium in order to get sleep on his tours. On his latest show, culminating in the performance in Carnegie Hall, he was also taking uppers to fight the stupor he needed to be in so he could sleep. He ended up, just like Morrison, killing himself. Writer's block, where he could no longer write lyrics or create music. You see what happened to Morrison. It's a devil's bargain. Look at Jimmy Page, for example. What's he written or created after his Thelema, Black Magic, Aleister Crowley period, and Led Zeppelin disbanded? He hasn't done any music since to speak of. Or a Truman Capote, after In Cold Blood, he all but it becomes alcoholics. Yeah, they can reminisce. Dylan talks about it as well. Ochs became involved in radical communist politics, including going to Chile to support the democratically elected Marxist Salvador Allende, who was assassinated by the CIA under the direction of Secretary of State under Nixon, Henry Kissinger. Today, Kissinger, after receiving the Nobel Peace Prize by the moral majority at the Swedish Academy for his participation in the mass slaughter of millions of Cambodians, Laotian, and Vietnamese peasants, is a member of the various trilateral commissions, Bilderbergs, WEF. You see him everywhere as an ex-foreign policy expert. Oakes remained a part of the anti-war protesters, performing with other radicals, many of whose names I doubt anyone remembers outside of John Lennon and Yoko, such as David Peel, Abby Hoffman, who I showed you with the shirt, Jerry Rubin, Teagarden, and Van Winkle. Oakes was so well known in the anti-war years that he and Dylan discussed the possibility of a joint concert tour. After the war ended in '75, Oakes began the same kind of rapid decline that so many others addicted to drugs experienced. He'd go on drunken rants about the FBI and CIA, wanting to have either Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, or Kentucky Fried Chicken's Colonel Sanders manage his career. Unable to pay rent, he was living out on the streets and getting into drunken barroom fights. Similar to Kerouac, he went into seclusion and retirement and madness, staying with his family in Far Rockaway, New York. Kerouac was down in Florida, which was just living with his mom when he died, and married to a Greek woman with a Greek family who didn't understand him or working class. These are tragedies. The last thing I'm doing is moralizing about this tragedy in America of these talented people going off into delusions of grandeur that they're going to change the world with submachine guns and berets. What it started out with idealism, it quickly turned into this power madness, the triumphing over evil through the power of their self-love songs. And the songs were just selfie love songs. Me generation. All the way through 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Me generation. It started with the 60s. Kill your parents. Who needs the parents? We're taking over. We got the gun. They got the guns, but we got the numbers. That's Jim Morrison. We're taking over. Well, that's what's out. That's what we have now. We've taken over, but who's ruling? Satan is ruling. That's the answer to that question. The me generation of newly minted Wall Street viper capitalists were the same 60s generation as well. It's chameleon-like. They metamorphose from this generation to disco Rod Stewart and disco Mick and Keith and disco Madonna. That's helped along by the cocaine and speed and LSD and speedballs and angel dust and hallucinogens and whatever kind of cocktails. Yeah, it creates this kind of immense fantasy worlds, but at the root of it, it's all dark. There's nothing positive that comes out of it. The same year that Oakes moved into madness under his sister's care in Far Rockaway, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which his father also had suffered from. It was prescribed medication. Within 3 months of moving to his sister's house, he hung himself. Years after his death, it was finally revealed that the FBI had a 500-page file on Phil Oakes, as it did on everybody else that was part of the anti-war movement, that of his stature. A verse from his own song, Small Circle of Friends, might serve as a fitting and ironic epitaph. Oh, there's a dirty paper using sex to make a sale. The Supreme Court was so upset they sent him off to jail. Maybe we should help the fiend and take away his fine, but we're busy reading Playboy and the Sunday New York Times, which are selling what? The softcore and the hardcore version. But it's all, the culture is turned into just a sex magic, black sex magic culture. Black magic woman, evil woman, Does anybody today note that Oakes is pointing directly at the hypocrisy of his fellow protesters? How about the next verse? Smoking marijuana is more fun than drinking beer. But a friend of ours was captured and they gave him 30 years. Maybe we should raise our voices, ask somebody why. But demonstrations are a drag. Besides, we're much too high. Well, they're not a drag anymore today. I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. That's what all that's really happened, isn't it? Demonstrations are no longer a drag because you've got these superstars. You've got these highly talented peoples. You've got Katy Perry and Madonna and all the other celebrities leading you, and you're just having a fun time. Plus, you can smoke your marijuana or drink your beer or whatever you want. And then you go back to work in your office, and you've struck your blow against this empire. You're being led by them. You're being led by them to put on your pink pussy hats and get them in office so they can declare war on Putin. We're the ones who pushed Russia into war. If there's anything left after this is over, there'll be a history that shows what really happened. There are plenty of people over there, real historians and military analysts, that know that we, the United States of America, have done this purposely. It was all part of the world planning of the Project for a New American Century, it's called. Look at the Dick Cheneys, look at the Hillary Clintons, it's the same team. The Helen Frankenthaler abstract expressionists are with the Cheneys as well. Helen Frankenthaler was Clement Greenberg, who's the abstract expressionist promoter of Pollock. And that was his girlfriend, his college flame, who he was banging. So that put her right up in the higher echelons of pouring liquid paint out haphazardly onto a canvas. So she's a genius. She's best pals with the Cheneys. I'm sure she's dead now. She has some connection. It's all connected to the 1% global elite. Is it art? No. There's no such thing as art. It's just advertising. Pop art was just a lot of people like Andy Warhol and James Rosenquist who were turned into advertisements for Coca-Cola and Elvis Presley. As far as what Oakes is saying, and demonstrations are a drag, besides we're much too high, is a prescient vision of where it's going. At the time, that's what he was, too high on his different combos that led to his death. In other words, the self-righteous hypocrites of the '68 revolution were never interested in the first place in social justice or any other kind of justice. They were interested in getting laid with as many people as they could in a week and being as high as they could get on any kind of drugs they could get their hands on. The irony, of course, is that dope-smoking Clinton and prosecuting attorney in LA, Kamala Harris, were the ones putting small-time pot smokers away for 30 years with their 3 strikes you're out policies. Oh, Clinton, I never inhaled. I tried to... Yeah, I don't really like this stuff. Yeah, well, he just likes the ladies in Epstein Island, like her. Think about it for a minute. I'll let the words sink in. Maybe they'll sink in with somebody. And where were these small-time, pot dealers or a pot smoker that Clinton and Harris are putting in jail? They were going into the Clinton-built for-profit prison in industrial complex, so-called, for profit, all their investors. Why are these people millionaires? Exactly. Why do they have all these homes, and why are they fantastically wealthy on the order of, I don't know, I don't even know, the Pelosi's, okay? The Biden crime family, the Clinton crime family, the Pelosi crime family. I'm just saying, drop out of the money game. And turn on to the Leonard Ravenhill, Jesus Christ as Savior, which isn't a game. It's reality. As far as Oaks goes, like so many other musicians, they leaving behind their wives and children, if they happen to have them, the moment their careers skyrocket. There's a brief paragraph in the Wikipedia entry on Oaks about his marriage to Alice Skinner, pregnant with their daughter Megan, that they separated in 1965 but never divorced. 1965 was the year his album I Ain't Marching Anymore was released by the Red Hot Elektra Records, that also released the Doors album, to Signal Doors album 2 years later, 1967. That's the year that the sincerity and socialist activity of the anti-war music was entirely erased by the nihilistic, surreal, psychedelic visions of the Doors, Hendrix, Cream, the Stones, and Beatles, which completely obliterated the real-world concerns in real social change in favor of hallucinated dream worlds and full sensory immersion. And like Lennon's wife, and you just leave behind your family obligations, like Gauguin going to Tahiti. It's too seductive a world of temptation to be, an overnight superstar. Ask Amy Winehouse, ask Kurt Cobain. Don't go down the road. If you're down the road, get off the road. Get off the broad path. The full statement of nihilistic surrealism, psychedelic revolution was actually released the year before. That was Frank Zappa's Freak Out. There's your cross-dressing. There's your Freemasonry. There's your Aleister Crowleyism. Zappa has a whole shelf of Freemason books. His daughter sent a picture of it. It's those were just reference books. Yeah, right. You don't have a library of books on Freemasons. Plus, we can go into Zappa's military background, a father who worked making chemicals. That means for the CIA, for the military in Baltimore when he was in high school, and just like Jim Morrison was in high school in Northern Virginia. And I was in high school in Northern Virginia during the war. You learn a lot, over time about what went on back there and who was behind it and who's connected to it through the counterculture. And what they want, they, meaning the dark powers, meaning the powers of darkness, what they want is people to be hooked on pleasure drugs and never come back. Just death is what they want. Death is what the devil wants. He just wants the more bodies people like this can bring to him. And look at their beautiful watches, and that looks so modern design on the ring. They're always fabulously dressed. Where is she again? See another close up. There she is on the war helmet. Underneath in the dome is the fresco is George Washington, the Freemason, as a deity who's worshipped. We're worshiping this Egyptian goddess. Just call it paganism. Let's see, I don't know how long this video is going. I'm tired. Anyway, it's 49 minutes. God bless everybody. I just am continuing with the historical information along with tracking what's going on in the real world. And there is nobody around me that has the slightest idea what's going on in Europe, because they don't have the slightest concern. They don't even know what's going on in Florida. They don't know what's going on because it's a delusional bubble created in everyone's head by the media they watch day in and day out and repeat to each other like it's the religion is TV. The religion in this country is television, and it's been that since the 50s. It's a simulated virtual reality. I don't know if I can get anybody, 1 or 2 or 3 people, that would be a great victory to bring them out of this broad path, marching with whatever. It doesn't have to be pink pussy hats. It can be, free like these. Where is Abby? Look, just say no. It's all about the drug. See, that's ridiculing Nancy Reagan saying, just say no. Why not? Why not just say no? It's easy enough. If he had said no, maybe he wouldn't have ended up dead in his 50s in his clothes on a bed in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Changing what exactly? Oh, more people can get high on better drugs, on more powerful drugs. Great, Abby. All right, I pray for everybody in the prayer closet. That's where it's at, is in prayer to God. No show, none of this show and demonstration of all your worship music and everything. That's absolutely pointless.